Multifamily is a need-based asset. There's always an opportunity. There's always a need for multifamily. I'm focusing on storage and industrial, which truly is a little bit of a luxury. We don't think of it that way, but we need housing. We don't necessarily need to store our crap in a box. We don't necessarily need to build something. Housing comes first. So that's why multifamily is a need-based asset. Most people get into multifamily. That's their next thing after single family. They think they know how to manage a multifamily because they have 5, 10 single families. And that's not the case. It's a different animal. But all those people who are good people, everybody wants some better for your family. All those people are now competing for these same projects in multifamily. So I still think multifamily is a safe space, but for me, how I would go into multifamily is I would go into much more of a core asset. I know there's not going to be as dynamic as a value add, but the stability is more important to me.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. So, Colm was just giving me crap about my name. Okay, am I a Sutter or am I a Suitor? Okay, so let's solve this problem. I am a suitor, and here's how that rocks. My husband was a very good suitor. Haha.
She's quite the catch.
Because it is my married name. My maiden name is Smith. So, which, Christina Smith is like the most common name on the planet, right? So at least I have something distinctive. Okay, Colm McEvely. Did I say it correct?
No, but it's fine.
No.
We're talking about
say
investing.
It correctly. Say
we're
it correctly.
talking about Colm McEvely, but we're talking about investing today, and we want to make sure that your listeners have value out of this conversation. So,
okay,
it's about what's in it for them. They're tuned into WWFM, right? Or what's in it for them, right?
So, what's in it for them. Totally. So, Christina Suter, Real Estate Breakthrough. Colm, great to have you here on the show. So excited. Thank you for being able to interview with me. I so appreciate having you at ITI and the authenticity you brought. And I thought, gosh, my listeners have got to listen to you. So right now, I know that you are kind of a free-floating investment advisor, and you specifically help out a variety of different companies. But let's bottom line your history so that people understand how you got from kiddo to investor.
All right, so I was born with congenital heart problems, which I knew would always affect me. Essentially what happens is I have this ticking clock, and everybody kind of has a ticking clock, right? Everybody has a death sentence, but we don't think about it, and we're getting real deep. But at the same time, we think we have all this time, but we don't. And so what happened when I was 30 is I had a heart failure, and I knew it was going to happen one day. And I was doing a high commission sales job, and I just thought, you know what? I'm tired of going to my boss every month and having him look at my numbers. I want to do something that's incrementally rewarding and more fulfilling on a daily basis. And I thought, what better to do than use leverage, which is in real estate. And then in syndication, it's leverage upon leverage because you're using other people's money. You can benefit from getting the depreciation. And so I thought, I'm going to jump into real estate because I can have more fulfillment from doing one project a year that pays me over the years versus doing, working with a CBO or a director of facilities or a CIO in a sales role and getting a one big deal, but probably not being able to sell them multiple projects in a row. Sometimes I can, but the key thing is I like the reoccurring income. I like the cash flow. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I made early on in commercial investing is I think my first 12 investments were all new development. And my thoughts was, okay, dude. So I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And I thought, when you're in your early on, you want to build as much equity as possible. And then as you get older, convert it to cash flow. But what happened is I realized that some of these projects were getting delayed, or some of these projects were not, I knew this, but they weren't paying for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I just didn't know what that felt like. And then I learned that cash flow is the lifeblood of a human, and having equity is like having muscle. So you can have a ton of muscle or a ton of equity, but if you don't have the cash flow, you're going to die. And so I think in the last 3 years, I've shifted more towards some more cash flowing investments, but I still look forward and I still enjoy when I do have a new construction exit.
Wow, you couldn't have said that any better. Like truly, it's a really good description. I love the analogy of muscle and lifeblood. Right? I mean, building something new is fun and that's exciting and the returns look fantastic, but the amount of space between you and returns, even in a successful project, is years. And a lot of that space is not under your control, as much as we like to think it is, as much as we like to try to estimate for it. The truth is, it's really between you and the permitting office. It's between you and the contractor, and sometimes between you and COVID about
And weather.
what that, huh?
And weather. I have an investment up north, and really the only problem we had, and the project finished on time, but we had a 6-month delay due to weather.
Right. So it's just, I'm just saying, I have noticed, and that's part of the, using real estate. So we know that real estate is complex. It's a great reward, and it can absolutely hand you your backside, and it is no fun when it does that. So why choose real estate to be the primary way to break through to your success? Is it really the heart condition and the freedom it gives you? Like, let's put a little flesh and blood on that moment where you knew that was just the right choice for you.
Well, sometimes I still wonder. No, no,
we
but
all still wonder. We all still wonder. But every 7 years, every cycle, I go through these years of going, "Oh my God, why am I doing this?"
Yeah, I think now's the time to get in, because if you prepare and you work hard the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's when we're really going to reap the rewards. And you kind of have to think about the last cycle. And so we're basically in 2008 right now, maybe 2009, and we want to prep for 2013. And the only way to do that is to really work the next 3 years. But I do think about, 2019, I made, I don't want to say the number, but I was making doctor income, and I was doing really well. I was buying like 2 duplexes in a year and stuff in Northern California. And the income comes in differently. And so the first couple of years I was beating myself up as a man, because as a man, I feel like I have to provide for my family. And it goes back to the whole importance of creating cash flow, especially creating cash flow and income in times that you don't understand or might not anticipate. For example, last year I was struggling to work because of a personal separation, and I was really mentally distracted. So I wasn't working, and I had the benefit of having these passive income streams to where I paid all my bills and I didn't work for months and months and months at a time, where I really found my heart and understood my boundaries as a person. And it was because I got into passive investing, and it's because I did the work 2, 3, 4, 5 years in advance. So sometimes the passive investing seems like it's a lot of work and you're not getting rewarded, but years down the line, you understand the benefits and the privilege that you have, because you might have a situation where you get in a car accident and you can't work, but you have all of your checks paid for from something you did in the years past. And that's why it's so critical right now to get in, get educated. There's going to be a lot of opportunities open on the market. And I think groups like ITI, there's groups all these groups are really important, because these in-person meetup groups provide a sounding board for making the decisions. There's your hoorah-rah. They're the people that are going to cheer you on. And I've done 14 or 15 investments with people that I met at the meetups. So I've became a millionaire, which isn't that much money, and I don't think that's an amount that you can retire on in the future.
Not anymore.
You have to have at least 6, 7, 8. Maybe, I have a number.
Oh, you have your number. I
have a number that I have, and it's because of the relationships that you meet at these people, and the access that you learn, the access to opportunities, and what you learn from getting exposed to different opportunities and hearing about other people's successes and failures. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about later on in this podcast, is what are some of the lessons learned from the deals that went south, and some of the lessons learned from the ones that went well, and why they went well.
All right. So really kind of, if you can, and that makes perfect sense to me, bottom line, and then go deep on, what is it really that you bring that is the secret sauce to people working with you?
Well, obviously transparency is important. Everybody says we have a conservative underwriting, but it's like, show me, show me the third-party report, show me all these things that are other people's recommendations and opinions on a particular investment opportunity that isn't connected to them potentially getting a check. So there's no financial tether or incentive for somebody to make a recommendation. But I think the thing that really separates myself from a lot of other investment advisors is, right now, I've been involved in 26 investments. I'm currently in 17. I am a passive investor myself. I understand the questions, the objections, and the obstacles, and the things that you would consider as an investor when I go into an investment opportunity. And I know that this is a multi-year relationship. I've had people invest with me before the pandemic and again invest with me this year. I've had people invest with me many times. It's because I'm putting it all out there, and I want to empower them and understand what their risk tolerances are and what their future goals are, so that I can align the offering to what they need. And sometimes I don't have it, but I can give them an opportunity or a recommendation for another thought leader in the industry.
You know, Colm, your ITI presentation was just so great because it was a combination between Q&A and your actual slides, and just the being able to say, what does it mean to truly cultivate a relationship with investors? Because sometimes you're the GP raising money, and sometimes you're an investor in the project, so you know both sides. But as the GP in the project, actually trying to raise money, there's this ongoing, like you said, I don't know if it's 8 times or 10 times, developing the relationship and bringing them value. Bring your investor value. How can you bring them value? Even whether it's an article, whether it's right? Your focus is on not getting them to say yes, but bringing them value.
Yeah. One of the things I said was you keep punching them or jabbing them in the face with value. So every time you reach out to your investor, you call them, it's not about a sale. It's about building trust, because nobody's going to do business with somebody they trust, but all investors invest to the level of trust. So part of that is getting in and really taking detailed notes on all your conversations. When you have 1,000 conversations a quarter, you're not going to remember every conversation, but you can strategically separate pieces of information, whether it be geo, their investment philosophy, their age, their sex, these different things that you can separate out and find articles of value that pertain to them. So I have an investor. I know he's going to Ireland, and this guy's invested at least $3 million with the company that I'm working with right now. And I knew that 2 months from now he's going to Ireland. So about a couple weeks before he was going to Ireland, I had a task reminder in my CRM to reach out, because my family's from Ireland. I know a lot of spots. So I called him out of the blue, not to talk about an investment, but to talk about, literally, there's a pizza shop from a guy that lived in the Bronx, went back to Ireland, and there's a pizza shop. And I was telling him about some things to do on N59. So really specific information that I wasn't able to do without having a good managed CRM. Yes. And then, really specific details in the notes. And I'm showing up adding value. I'm not gonna sell the guy. People hate being sold. I like to help people buy.
It's a really great example, and the amount of respect that you talked about, and really getting to know who your potential investors are, and really understanding what they need and what is it that's going to fit their portfolio. That sort of investment advisor side of being the capital raiser, but also knowing how a project works really well, being on the GP side and being able to understand why this project works the way it works. Like you said, transparency. Show me the third-party reports.
Yeah.
Right, and being able to walk both sides just makes it really amazingly helpful, I think, for the investors that work with you and understanding where you're coming from, right? Who you are and where you're coming from. So that being said, because I'm kind of like nailing down what I perceive to be the secret sauce of your company, which is you, right? The secret sauce of your company is you and the ethics you bring, and the fact that you think about it from both sides as the investor, but you also think about it from the GP. You think about the transparency, what you need to have, but what does the investor truly need on their side, and not selling them, but adding value so they can know, like, and trust you. Maybe they invest in this deal, maybe they invest in the next deal.
I have empathy to a fault. I have a heart. This is people's money. This is not my grandmother's money. This is something I need to protect like it's my grandmother's money, because people worked so hard for that. Some of them aren't necessarily financially sophisticated. They don't really know. They trust you. Yeah. And so I've actually walked away from previous partners because of misalignment of undervalue or underwriting values, let's just say. Like, if I don't feel comfortable with an investment, I really won't raise money for it. And I've walked away from situations like that because, it's wrong. It's wrong to, I'm calling it extending and pretending. I think there's a lot of that going on in the industry. Yeah. And there's still some really good operators. And so the frustrating part is you have good operators out there that are dealing with poor investor sentiment from an investor dealing with a bad operator. So they have the investor has a salty tongue in their mouth, a salty taste in their mouth,
They do.
and then they have this opportunity that could actually be a really good one, but their money's either locked up or tied up, or they just don't trust the good operator. And it's because it's kind of like, you move on, you got a girlfriend or boyfriend, you move on to the next person, and for the first couple months,
Yes.
you're thinking they're going to behave the same as your ex, and it's like, no, this is different. So
I can tell you, for the first year and a half of being married to my husband, every once in a while he'd like make this comment. I'm like, "Hey, you married to me? I'm not that one. That
I'm
was
not
last
Patricia.
one." Just saying. Think about it. This is the look at the face. Just
Yeah.
reminding you.
Yeah. So your husband was thinking that you're the past syndicator, and you're not.
Right. Exactly. My husband and you just in developing that trust. So right now, what do you feel like your industry might be facing? What do we understand? Because you're primarily in the residential multifamily market, right? You could say that that's part
My
of your
investments are lately. I've been really focused on industrial and self-storage.
Right.
I still think that multifamily is a need-based asset. There's always an opportunity. There's always a need for multifamily. I'm focusing on storage and industrial, which truly is a little bit of a luxury. We don't think of it that way, but we need housing. We don't necessarily need to store our crap in a box. We don't necessarily need to build something. Housing comes first. So that's why multifamily is a need-based asset. I think some of the there's more opportunities than challenges. Obviously, everybody knows that the challenges comes with the cost of money, with the debt service that has floating rate interest.
Yes.
It was really hard to secure fixed rate debt a few years ago, because even if it was more stable, your returns were so much lower than somebody else that had floating rate debt. So syndicators were pressured to have these higher returns at the compromise of the risk profile of the investment. And I've been working with a self-storage company that has only forever done fixed rate debt. That's one of the things that I've learned. I actually had a project in San Antonio that went south that I was invested on, and I think the key takeaway is I learned what type of debt I feel comfortable with, and I learned how important it is to have longer terms, or a term longer than the business plan, because the longer the debt term, maybe the interest rate's higher, but if the sponsor has to change the business strategy or plan, they have the time to do so. And so that's one of my favorite takeaways from that opportunity that went south is really understand the risk associated with the debt.
That's perfect to describe a deal that went wrong. And it's because there is so much in real estate where, like, I was teasing before we turned the video on, like, you really got to be willing to wake up and say, hey, I'm going to get knocked in the nose today. Let's do it. Right? Because you have this variable rate debt, you have the increasing interest rate. All of a sudden, we're seeing asset classes, specifically multifamily, which has the variable rate debt on it. Like you said, they're cornered into competing. So they were, instead of taking the fixed rate, which it means their returns were lower, it's harder to attract money, they're almost cornered into taking debt that actually moves with the rate. Everybody's like, oh, the rate's not going to move. The rate's not going to move. Well, guess what? The rate moved and moved aggressively. And then we saw a whole series of multifamily investments with, I think, slightly newer investors and syndicators running it. But I saw some even older syndicators.
Well, because they were getting pressured
Down by it because of the pressure, right? This is
Yeah.
what we have to do in order to even be able to purchase in order to be able to raise money, in order to be able to buy a property. We have the compressed cap rates, and we still need to offer 8 to 10 to 15% return to our investors. And the only way to make that marriage work so we can keep attracting capital is to have lower quality debt on it. That's what I think I personally think you've described that perfectly.
I'm glad I learned this lesson now,
Yeah.
and not 30 years from now, because I have the opportunity to. I only lost 50,000, and I got 10x, 20x that deployed. But I'm just saying, like, I'm so glad I learned it now versus 5 years from retirement.
If you can take it at 50,000, take it, baby. Because in 2009, 10, and 11, in that bottom of the market between 2006, It's a story. It's a story for another day, not for today. We'll pass on that one. It's on some other reel, some other podcast somewhere, as my 2006 through 9 story. But so tell me though, tell me part of your choice to move away from multifamily into storage, even if it's less of a need housing. Why is that so valuable right now? I agree with you, by the way. I agree with you, but tell me part of your thinking behind that very key shift.
Really it comes down to competition and asset price. Basically, there's most people that get into doing we talked about competition. Most people get into multifamily. That's their next thing after single family. They think they know how to manage a multifamily because they have 5, 10 single families, and that's not the case. It's a different animal. But all those people who are good people, they all, everybody wants better for your family. All those people are now competing for these same projects in multifamily. So I still think multifamily is a safe space. But for me, how I would go into multifamily is I would go into much more of a core asset. I know there's not going to be as dynamic as a value add, but the stability is more important to me. And I've noticed that investors are less concerned with the total project returns and more concerned with having a higher preferred return and cash flow right now, because they feel like that stability. In storage, you have a lot more mom and pop operators. We literally bought a facility that we had to take pictures of the whiteboard for their financials, and it was hard to get debt from the bank because the bank's like, what's this garbage? But
sorry.
Yeah, so we're currently raising money for an opportunity in Tulsa, and it's 70% economic occupancy. We talked to the operator. They said they don't want to raise rates because their cost basis is so low. They don't want to deal with the headache, and they just want to retire and get out. And so that's an example of an industry or an asset type that's full of operators that are ripe for impregnating their facilities with technology. There's smart locks. Sometimes the smart locks don't make sense, but there's smart locks. You could do remote. You could do remote auditing, remote security. You could reduce your on-site overhead. There's no tenants, no toilets, no termites, stuff like that. A metal box is a metal box is a metal box. So you're really more focused on the supply and the demand concerns and watching out for new developments versus maybe something in multifamily has an array of things you have to watch out for. So.
No, that's a really good description. And you're not the only one I find moving from multifamily specifically into storage. And, just to sort of recap it, why are people from multifamily moving into storage? And it really does have to do with what I call the professionalization of the multifamily market, which had kept the cap rates compressed for so long because the operators were actually very, very efficient. And there was a lot of good money hunting after deals. And now you had to really be efficient in order to raise the money, like we talked about the squeeze before. But it made the whole multifamily market between 2010, 2012, but to now truly have a compressed cap rate where I never bought in. I bought my first multifamily with a 7 cap, and that was normal for the time in LA, right?
That reminds me of Dave Lindahl, Ari Mentor, where he has you should buy something at a 10 cap. It's like, what is this, 2004?
Where is there a 10 cap?
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't really exist. And there are too many professional operators who are too efficient and too much good money flowing into that particular asset class. It was the first to recover. It was the flight to safety after the Great Recession. Was so many single family homes are going to be lost. We're going to see a wash in single family homes. Investors worked out, well, all those people need to move somewhere. They're going to move into multifamily. So investors doubled down on multifamily, and the cap rates have been compressed ever since. But when you talk about storage, a lot less professional operators in the storage space. You said it so perfectly, which is just the description of they're just inefficient, right? They're not seeking to be as efficient. They're not as good at managing. You got the older mom and pops that have been running it for forever, and they are the tired owners, and they're ready to let it go. And it makes sense that you would move into that space. So tell me, this is my favorite last question to ask. What does financial freedom mean to you? Financial freedom is, to me, what this is all about. My financial freedom story is that I wanted to pick up my kid on time from school. Weird maybe, but if you're a mama, you understand what it means to your kid when you're 5 minutes late or 15 minutes late, and how they feel unimportant, overlooked, or not protected or not safe. I wanted to pick up my kid on time. What does financial freedom mean to you?
I'm going to preface with every investor needs to have a minimum savings amount. So I have a number that I like to have in my checking account, and if I go over it, I'll invest anything above it. So I'm going to preface that question with.
Oh, good, great. No, teach us that. That's perfect.
Yeah. So the first, and so my example is mine. I have other rentals, so if I really needed liquidity, I could sell them. I don't have any kids. There's things that my number is probably a lot lower than other people's, but my number would be 40,000. Anything above 40,000, I would feel comfortable investing based on my knowledge. I have one of my best friends. His number is 200,000. He has 2 kids. He has 4 or 5 cars that he has payments on. He's got a big house in Phoenix. So his number is 200,000. But you need to understand and identify that number first, and that's the prerequisite before looking and entertaining any opportunities, because it gives you permission to take that next step to invest. Otherwise, you might say, well, we'll invest eventually. It's like, no. What's your number so that you feel comfortable to move forward? So you stop sitting on the sideline and do this. Edutainment doesn't make any money. You're guaranteed to get a 0 return if you never invest. So that's the first thing. My number is 40K. It's not crazy. It might change if when I have kids and stuff like that. But financial freedom for me probably means taking my whole family to the World Cup final. It means taking the whole month of the World Cup off.
Yeah.
Football is very important to me. I still play multiple teams a week, and I think that is what financial freedom means for me. I have an opportunity to close up shop, take months off at a time, and spend time with my family doing a recreational thing I love. That would be financial freedom.
Beautifully said. Colm, thank you so very, very, very much, both for coming to ITI and letting us pick your brain on what it truly means to be a successful capital raiser and offer a high level of trust and service with that, and showing up here on my Real Estate Breakthrough Show and letting me pick your brain on a variety of other topics, which are also, I hope, educational and fascinating for people. How do people get a hold of you if they want to either have you as a GP in their deal, or they want to be able to pick your brain as an advisor working with smaller investors? How do they do that?
Yeah, they could throw it on my email. They could throw an email up, colm@tgaip.com. That's colm@tgaip.com. And we could set up a call. I could help them out. I might not be the right person, but I probably know the right person.
That's really well said. That's perfect. All right, guys. Now you know how to get a hold of him. You get a sense for who he is. Thank you so much for listening to Real Estate Breakthrough. You'll find us twice a month on all kinds of listing services. I'm Christina Suter, helping you find your real purpose through real estate.